The story begins at the Grand Seoul Financial Gala. Minho is on stage, smugly announcing his family's resurgence, crediting his strategic genius. The heavy doors groan open. Yamisi Ademola enters, her presence a terrifying intensity. She is stunning in a midnight black silk gown that highlights her curves, walking with the confidence of a woman who owns the city. Behind her, the legendary Kang Dae follows, his scarred knuckles resting protectively on her waist. Yamisi, you forgot one thing in your genius plan, Minho. You left the architect of your fortune on a rainy highway. I didn't just come to watch you fail. I came to collect the interest on the 7 months you stole from me. Minho, stammering, Yamisi, you don't have the papers to be here. She doesn't need papers to own this room, Minho. She has me, Kang Dae said. And as of 5 minutes ago, I own your citizenship, your company, and your debt. Security, remove this waiter from my queen's sight.
Welcome to AFRO-KOREAN Mafia love thrillers, the home of dark romance, brutal betrayals, forbidden passion, and revenge that cuts deep. Here, we explore deep, emotional, and thrilling love stories between African women and Korean men, stories filled with passion, culture clash, forbidden love, secrets, sacrifice, and destiny. From tender romance to intense drama, from heartbreak to healing, every story pulls you into a world where love crosses borders and challenges expectations. If you love stories where powerful men fall for the one woman they were never supposed to love, and vice versa, where enemies become lovers, and where every choice has a deadly consequence, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe to this thrilling channel. Like and share this video because every week we bring you heart-pounding mafia love stories that will keep you hooked till the very last word. Now sit back because this story is about to blow your mind. Now, let's get back to our story.
The rain in Gyeonggi was relentless, a cold, heavy curtain that turned the white silk of Yamisi's wedding dress into a leaden weight. She stood on the shoulder of the dark highway, her heels sinking into the mud. Less than 10 minutes ago, Minho had stopped the car. He didn't look at her, he just stared at the steering wheel. My family found a better match, Yamisi, he had said, his voice devoid of the warmth he'd used to woo her when she was just a waitress at his friend's gala. You're brilliant, yes. You fixed my father's books and saved our firm from the audit. But you're a waitress with no papers. You were a project, not a wife. He had shoved her out into the storm, taking the folder containing her residency application with him. Now she was a ghost in a lace dress. The sound of the rain was suddenly drowned out by the rhythmic, synchronized hum of heavy engines. 12 matte black SUVs crested the hill, their LED headlamps cutting through the dark like the eyes of predators. They didn't pass her. They slowed, pulling onto the shoulder in a perfect, military-style line that boxed her in. The door of the lead vehicle opened. A pair of polished leather boots stepped into the mud. Kang Dae stepped out. At 40, he possessed a terrifying intensity that made the very air feel pressurized. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like the storm itself. He walked toward her, unfurling a large black umbrella. He stopped inches from her, the silk of his designer suit bone dry. He looked at her ruined dress, then shifted his dark eyes to her face. He didn't see a pity bride. He saw the woman whose intellectual fingerprints were all over the financial documents he had been intercepting for months. Minho is a small man who fears big minds, Kang Dae said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. He left you here to drown because he knew he couldn't control you. Yamisi wiped the rain from her eyes, her intelligence sparking even through the shock. And why are you stopping? To finish the job? Kang Dae reached out, his scarred knuckles gently lifting her chin so she had to meet his gaze. A dangerous but sweet smirk touched his lips. I don't waste talent, Yamisi Ademola. I've spent 3 months trying to find the analyst who saved Minho's company from me. I didn't expect to find her in a ditch. He stepped closer, the umbrella now shielding them both. Get in the car. By morning, you'll have your papers. By next week, you'll have Minho's head on a silver platter. Which would you prefer? Yamisi looked at the convoy, then at the man offering her a kingdom. She didn't hesitate. She stepped out of the mud. I want both. As the heavy door of the SUV closed, sealing out the sound of the rain, Yamisi felt the seat heaters activate. The interior smelled of expensive leather and cedarwood. The first rule of my house, Yamisi, Kangdae said as the convoy pulled away in silence. We don't look back. We only look at the target. Yamisi leaned back into the leather, her mind already calculating the interest on Minho's betrayal. Then let's start with his offshore accounts. I know the passwords he thinks I forgot. The transition from the mud of the highway to the peak of Seoul's skyline marks the end of Yamisi's life as a victim. In this world, her brilliance isn't just an asset, it's the ammunition Kangdae has been searching for. The convoy didn't stop at a house. It pulled into the subterranean garage of the Obsidian Tower, a monolith of black glass that served as both Kangdae's home and his war room. As the doors opened, a phalanx of stone-faced guards bowed in unison. Stand up, Kangdae muttered to the guards, his hand firmly on the small of Yamisi's back. She isn't a guest. She is the new architect. He led her to a private elevator that required a biometric scan of his scarred knuckles. They ascended in a blur of motion until the doors opened to a penthouse that defied logic. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the neon veins of Seoul pulsing below. Minho's family office is over there, Kangdae said, pointing to a smaller, dim building 3 blocks away. From here, they look like ants. That is the perspective you will keep from now on. He walked to a sleek obsidian desk and tossed a black titanium card onto the surface. Beside it sat a new Korean residence permit with Yamisi's photo, the ink still seemingly fresh. You promised papers, Yamisi said, her smart and intelligent eyes scanning the document for flaws. You work fast. I work efficiently, Kangdae corrected, his voice low and dangerous, yet oddly sweet as he poured her a glass of vintage amber liquid. But that card has no limit, because I expect you to spend it. I need you to look like a woman who can buy and sell Minho's father without checking the balance. Yamisi stepped toward the glass, her reflection, still in the ruined white dress, clashing with the luxury around her. You want to use my knowledge of their shell companies to absorb them, don't you? You didn't stop for a bride. You stopped for a map to their vault. Kangdae walked up behind her, his reflection looming like a protective shadow. I stopped for the only woman who survived Minho's pity and came out with his encryption keys. You want revenge, Yamisi. I want market share. It's the most honest proposal you'll ever receive. Yamisi took a sip of the drink, the fire of the alcohol matching the flame in her chest. Then let's start with the Busan port expansion. Minho thinks he secured the funding today. He doesn't know I moved the collateral into a dead drop account before I left the car. Kangdae's eyes flashed with secret respect. He reached out and tucked a damp curl behind her ear. Beautiful, brilliant, and ruthless. We're going to be a problem for this city, Yamisi. Kangdae tapped a button on his desk, and a 3D holographic map of the city's financial district filled the room. Tomorrow, the stylists arrive, Kangdae said. The day after, we attend the ministry gala. Minho will be there to celebrate his success. You will be there to announce his bankruptcy. Yamisi looked at the hologram. He's going to try to use my status against me. He'll tell them I'm an illegal waitress. Kangdae leaned in, his breath warm against her temple. Let him try. By then, you won't just have papers, Yamisi. You'll have the deed to the building he's standing in. The white lace that had once symbolized Yamisi's hope was now nothing more than a shroud for a woman who no longer existed. To dismantle an empire, she had to look like the person who was already ruling it. The morning light in the obsidian tower was cold and precise. Much like the team of stylists Kang Dae had summoned, they moved with the quiet efficiency of clockwork, their eyes widening only slightly when they saw Yamisi's beautiful and curvy silhouette. They weren't just dressing a woman, they were sculpting a weapon. Yamisi sat in a velvet chair, her smart and intelligent mind racing even as they unraveled her hair. "The residency permit you gave me," she said, her voice steady as a stylist worked on her curls. "It's not just a visa, it's an executive class G1. It requires a sponsor with a net worth of at least 10 billion won. Kang Dae stood by the window, his back to the room, but his reflection in the glass showed a ruthless smirk. "I don't do things by halves, Yamisi. If you're going to walk into the ministry gala as my partner, the government needs to know you are untouchable." He turned and the room went silent. He walked toward her, his scarred knuckles brushing against a rack of custom-tailored clothes. He pulled out a suit of black silk, a jacket with razor-sharp shoulders and a skirt that promised both elegance and terrifying intensity. "Minho wanted you to be a waitress in a bride's dress," Kang Dae whispered, leaning down until his lips were inches from her ear. "He wanted you small so he could feel tall, but I want the world to look at you and wonder how they ever survived without your permission." When Yamisi finally stepped in front of the three-way mirror, the transformation was total. Her hair was a defiant crown of curls, voluminous and regal. The black silk hugged her curves, exuding a confident queen energy. She didn't look like a girl who had been left in the rain. She looked like the person who decided when it was allowed to stop. "You look lethal," remarked Kang Dae, his dark eyes locking onto hers with a secret respect that felt more intimate than any touch. Yamisi adjusted her cuffs, her eyes cold and analytical. "Good. Because I finished the audit on Minho's family trust. He didn't just dump me, Kang Dae. He stole the encryption key for the Busan Port Expansion Fund. He's planning to use it tonight to secure his family's seat on the National Council." Kang Dae's expression shifted to one of predatory protection. "Then we better not be late. It would be a shame for him to start his victory speech before his downfall arrives." As they walked toward the elevator, Yamisi opened her gold-encased tablet. "I've rerouted the port's digital collateral to a blind trust. Minho thinks he has the key, but I changed the locks the moment I stepped into your convoy." Kang Dae paused, a dangerous but sweet chuckle vibrating in his chest. "You really are a genius, aren't you?" Yamisi didn't smile. She just watched the elevator floor numbers descend. "In my country, we say, the lizard that jumps from the high iroko tree says he will praise himself if no one else does. I'm not waiting for praise anymore, Kang Dae. I'm taking the tree." The moment of the first strike had arrived. The ministry gala was the crown jewel of Seoul's social calendar, and Minho was currently the center of attention, basking in the false glory of a success built on Yamisi's stolen intellect. The grand ballroom of the Sheila Hotel was a sea of gold leaf, champagne towers, and elite socialites who traded secrets like currency. Minho stood at the center of a circle of ministers, his chest puffed out with a cowardice masked by expensive tailoring. He was bragging about the Busan port expansion, claiming he had solved the encryption bottleneck that had stumped the city's top analysts. Suddenly, the heavy double doors at the back of the hall didn't just open, they were held wide by Kang Dae's stone-faced guards. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Yamisi Ademola stepped onto the marble floor. She was breathtaking. The black silk of her suit moved like liquid shadows, and the defiant crown of her hair commanded every eye in the room. But it was the man beside her that caused the real panic. Kang Dae walked with a predatory protection, his presence radiating a terrifying intensity that made even the ministers take a step back. "Minho," Yamisi said. her voice no longer trembling, but cutting through the room with a chilling respect. "You're telling a very interesting story. I'm curious, how exactly did you bypass the 256-bit encryption on the port's collateral?" Minho's face drained of color, turning a sickly gray. "Yamisi? You shouldn't be here. Guards, this woman is an illegal." "This woman," Kang Dae interrupted, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that silenced the guards before they could move, "is the majority shareholder of the trust that owns your family's debt. And as for her status," he pulled a black leather folder from his jacket and tossed it onto a nearby table. "She is a Tier 1 executive under my direct sponsorship. Touch her, and you're touching the Obsidian Tower." Yamisi stepped forward, her smart and intelligent eyes locking onto Minho's. She didn't look like a waitress, she looked like his judge. She held up her gold-encased tablet. "I didn't just move the collateral, Minho," she whispered, loud enough for the stunned ministers to hear. "I traced the cheating deals you made to secure the bid. You didn't win the port. You bribed the port, and I have the receipts." Minho stumbled back, hitting the edge of a buffet table. You can't prove anything. It's my word against a waitress." Kang Dae stepped into Minho's personal space, his scarred knuckles brushing against Minho's silk lapel, a gesture of ruthless intimidation. "It's not her word, Minho. It's the data, and the data says you're bankrupt. However, my partner is feeling generous." Yamisi swiped her tablet, and a takeover agreement appeared on the massive projector screens behind the stage, replacing Minho's victory slides. "Sign over your family's remaining shares to Kang Dae's conglomerate by midnight, or I hit send on the whistleblower report to the National Tax Service." "You have 4 hours," Yamisi added, a dangerous but sweet smile playing on her lips. "I'd suggest you start writing your resignation speech." Minho was a cornered rat, and cornered rats don't negotiate, they bite. Instead of signing the papers, he fled the gala to the only place he felt he still had control, the Busan shipping docks, where his family's illegal cargo was being offloaded under the cover of a moonless night. The air at the docks was thick with the smell of brine and industrial grease. Minho stood in the middle of a shipping container maze, surrounded by a dozen hired, ruthless mercenaries. He clutched his laptop like a shield, his eyes darting into the shadows. "She won't find us here. Once this cargo moves, we have enough liquidity to flee to Singapore." Suddenly, the harbor's massive floodlights flickered to life, blinding the group. The heavy, rhythmic thud of a dozen SUV doors closing echoed through the steel corridors. Yamisi Ademola stepped into the light. She had traded the gala suit for a long, leather trench coat that billowed around her curvy frame like a dark cape. Beside her, Kang Dae moved with a predatory protection, his hand resting on the hilt of a tactical blade at his hip. "You always were a slow learner, Minho," Yamisi called out, her voice no longer trembling but ringing with chilling respect over the roar of the ocean. "I didn't just track your bank accounts, I tracked your GPS. I designed the logistics software for this port, remember? Every crane here belongs to me tonight." Minho's cowardice flared. "Kill them! Get rid of them!" he screamed to his mercenaries. The mercenaries took one look at Kang Dae, the man whose dragon tattoo was now visible as he rolled up his sleeves, and froze. They knew the complex code of the city. You don't fire at the Obsidian Tower if you want to live to see the sun. "The docks are closed, Minho," Kang Dae said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. He gestured to the massive crane overhead. Yamisi tapped a command on her gold-encased tablet. With a mechanical groan, the crane lowered a massive electromagnet directly over Minho's container. Before he could react, the steel box containing his family's last hope was hoisted 50 feet into the air. "That's my life!" Minho shrieked. "No," Yamisi said, stepping closer until she was face to face with the man who had left her in the rain. "That was my hard work, and I'm repossessing it." Kang Dae stepped forward, his scarred knuckles catching the light. My partner has a long memory, Minho. She remembers the mud, she remembers the rain, and she remembers that you have 2 hours left until your name is synonymous with trash in every bank from Seoul to London. Yemisi looked at the suspended container. Drop it, she whispered into her tablet. The container slammed into the concrete with a bone-jarring thud, bursting open to reveal the cheating contraband inside. Minho fell to his knees, his vulnerability and shock finally complete. "I'll sign," he gasped. "I'll sign everything." Signing the papers was merely the legal death of Minho's empire. Now, Yemisi Ademola wanted the social one. She wanted him to feel the exact weight of the pity he had tried to bury her with. The next evening, the Obsidian Tower's private lounge was bathed in the warm amber glow of sunset. Yemisi sat in a throne-like velvet chair, her curvy silhouette draped in a gown of molten gold silk. She was reading a digital report on the day's market. Minho's family stock had officially flatlined. "He's at the gate," Kang Dae said, walking in with 2 glasses of dark, expensive wine. He looked dangerous but sweet, his tie loosened, the dragon tattoo on his neck catching the dim light. "He's been there for 3 hours. He looks like he's been sleeping in the rain he left you in." "Let him up," Yemisi said, her smart and intelligent eyes never leaving the screen. "I want him to see what belonging actually looks like." When the elevator doors opened, Minho stumbled out. He was a wreck. His designer suit was wrinkled, his hair was matted, and his eyes were bloodshot with cowardice. He looked at the luxury, the stone-faced guards, and then at Yemisi, who looked more like a deity than a waitress. "Yemisi, please," Minho gasped, falling to his knees before he even reached her. "The banks have frozen my personal accounts. My father has disowned me. They say I'm a financial scandal that can't be cleaned. Talk to Kang Dae. Tell him I signed. Tell him to give me back enough to leave the country." Yemisi slowly set her tablet down. She stood up, the gold silk whispering against the floor as she walked toward him. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. "You didn't marry me because you wanted to help me with my papers, Minho. You married me because I was the only one who could hide the fact that you were stealing from your own father. You used my status as a waitress to make me invisible. But look at me now." Kang Dae stepped up behind her, his scarred knuckles resting on the back of her chair in a display of predatory protection. "You're bothering my partner, Minho, and in this house, we don't like beggars." "I'll do anything. I'll be your servant. I already have a staff, and unlike you, they are competent. You wanted me to be a black bride left in the rain. Well, the rain has stopped for me, but for you, it's just beginning." Yemisi turned her back on him, returning to her seat. "Guards, show him the exit, and make sure he walks. He likes the road so much, he can stay on it." As the guards dragged a screaming, pleading Minho away, Kang Dae handed Yemisi her wine. "You're getting good at this, Yemisi, almost as if you were born to rule." Yemisi took a sip, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "I wasn't born to rule, Kang Dae. I was trained by the people who tried to break me. I'm just using their own lessons against them." The legal war was won, but the underworld has its own set of laws. To stay at the top of the Obsidian Tower, Yemisi Ademola had to move beyond financial spreadsheets and into the heart of the complex code that governed Kang Dae's life. The atmosphere in the tower changed after Minho's removal. The air felt charged, more intense. Kang Dae led Yemisi to the lower levels of the estate, a private gym and tactical suite where the stone-faced guards trained. Minho used people like tools, Kang Dae said, his voice low and dangerous as he stripped off his suit jacket, revealing the full extent of the dragon tattoo winding down his arm. "In my world, we use people like family, but family requires a test. You've shown me your mind, Yemisi. Now show me your loyalty." He handed her a small encrypted burner phone. There is a mole in my logistics department. Someone has been cheating our cargo manifests to help Minho's father stage a counterstrike. I know who it is, but I want to see if you can spot the traitor before they strike us." Yamisi took the phone, her smart and intelligent eyes immediately cataloging the data streams. She didn't flinch at the intensity of the training room or the ruthless stares of the men around her. She looked at the manifest and, within seconds, spotted a 0.01% discrepancy in the weight of the gold bullion shipments. "It's not an outsider," Yamisi whispered, her intensity matching Kang Dae's. "It's your head of security. He's been skimming off the top and using the weight difference to hide GPS trackers." Kang Dae's expression shifted from dangerous to a look of secret respect. He walked toward her, his scarred knuckles brushing the hair from her neck. "Most people would have taken hours. You took seconds. You truly are the queen this empire has been waiting for." But the test wasn't over. A red light flashed in the room. The tracker Yamisi just identified was moving. Minho's father's men were approaching the tower's perimeter. The social humiliation of the elite was the appetizer. Now it was time for the main course, the total financial erasure of the man who had abandoned her. Yamisi Ademola was no longer playing defense. She was the architect of a total collapse. Back at the Obsidian Tower, the war room was alive with the hum of servers. Yamisi sat at the center of the console, her smart and intelligent eyes reflecting the cascading red lines of the stock market. Beside her, Kang Dae watched with a ruthless satisfaction, his hand resting on her shoulder, a silent anchor of predatory protection. Minho's father just liquidated his personal properties to cover the margin call, Yamisi noted, her fingers dancing across the glass keyboard. "He thinks he's stabilizing the ship. He doesn't realize I've already drilled holes in the hull." She had discovered the ultimate financial scandal. Minho had been cheating the firm's taxes by using Yamisi's old waitress payroll ID as a front for offshore transfers. He had tried to frame her for his theft, but in doing so, he had given her the legal standing to claim the accounts as her own. "Send the command," Kang Dae whispered, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. Yamisi hit a single key. In an instant, the screen showed the total surrender of Minho's family assets. Their bank accounts didn't just drop, they vanished. The pity bride had just reclaimed every cent they had ever made off her labor. Across the city, in a crumbling office, Minho watched his laptop screen go black. A single message appeared. "Debt paid. ... YA." "It's done," Yamisi said, leaning back. Her intensity hadn't faded, but it had shifted from anger to a chillingly calm resolve. "They have nothing left, not even the name Ademola to spit on." Kang Dae took her hand, his scarred knuckles contrasting with her smooth skin. "You didn't just break them, Yamisi. You deleted them. But be careful. A man with nothing left to lose is the only thing more dangerous than a man with everything." Yamisi looked at him, her confident queen gaze unwavering. "Let him come. I've already calculated the cost of his desperation." The celebration of their victory was meant to be the final note of the symphony, but Minho, stripped of his wealth and his name, chose to go out in a blaze of cowardice and lead. The rooftop garden of the Obsidian Tower was a sanctuary of glass, white orchids, and the shimmering Seoul skyline. Yamisi stood by the infinity pool, wearing a gown of blood and diamonds, a crimson silk that draped over her curvy frame, paired with a necklace of raw, uncut gems. Kang Dae was a few feet away, speaking to his stone-faced guards, his dangerous but sweet smile appearing only when he caught Yamisi's eye. The air was perfect until the smart and intelligent Yamisi noticed the silence. The crickets had stopped. The wind had shifted. "Kang Dae!" she shouted, her intensity spiking. Before the guards could react, a service elevator at the far end of the garden hissed open. Minho stepped out, but he was unrecognizable. His eyes were wild, his suit was torn, and in his shaking hand he held a high-caliber pistol. He wasn't there to talk, he was there for an assassination attempt. "You took everything," Minho screamed, his voice cracking with cowardice. "If I don't have a life in this city, neither do you." He fired. The world slowed down. Yemisi didn't scream. Her quick thinking kicked in. She grabbed a heavy marble ice bucket from the table and hurled it with all her strength at the heat lamp beside Minho. The glass shattered, creating a cloud of crystalline shards and fire. The distraction gave Kang Dae the second he needed. He moved with predatory protection, crossing the distance in a blur of motion. He didn't use a gun, he used his scarred knuckles. With a ruthless efficiency, he disarmed Minho, the sound of breaking bone echoing against the glass walls. Kang Dae held Minho over the edge of the infinity pool, the drop to the street below, a terrifying void. He looked back at Yemisi, waiting for her command. "He wanted to leave me in the mud," Yemisi said, walking over, her face a mask of chilling respect for the danger they had survived. She looked at the man who had once been her fiancé. But even the mud is too good for him now. She reached out and plucked the residency folder, the one he had stolen from her in the rain, from his inner pocket. "Take him to the authorities," she commanded. "I want him to spend every day of his life in a cell, knowing a waitress is the reason he'll never see the sky again." This brings us full circle to the high-stakes moment that opened our story, where the pity bride finally becomes the architect of her own destiny. The Grand Seoul Financial Gala was at its peak. The elite socialites were already whispering about Minho's sudden disappearance and the rumors of a total corporate collapse. Then, the heavy oak doors burst open, and the room went cold. Yemisi Ademola walked in. She wasn't just wearing a dress, she was wearing power. Her black silk gown flowed like ink, and her defiant crown of hair was held in place by a tiara of black opals. Behind her stood Kang Dae, his predatory protection making it clear that the obsidian tower had officially arrived at the party. Yemisi walked straight to the stage, displacing the interim board chairman. She didn't use a microphone. Her voice, no longer trembling, carried through the silent hall. "I am Yemisi Ademola, the new majority shareholder of the Min Group." A gasp rippled through the crowd. "7 months ago, I was a waitress. 7 days ago, I was a black bride left on a highway. Today, I am the woman who owns your debt." She reached out and plucked the residency folder, the one he had stolen from her in the rain, from his inner pocket. "Take him to the authorities," she commanded. "I want him to spend every day of his life in a cell, knowing a waitress is the reason he'll never see the sky again." The aftermath was quiet. Yemisi and Kang Dae stood on the balcony of the obsidian tower as the first rays of a new dawn touched the Seoul skyline. The intensity of the war had faded, replaced by a deep, dangerous but sweet peace. Kang Dae turned to her, producing a velvet box. Inside was a raw black diamond ring set in heavy, scarred platinum. "You didn't just help me take the city, Yemisi. You showed me that a dragon is nothing without its heart." He slid the ring onto her finger. "You have your papers, you have your revenge. Now, what do you want for yourself?" Yemisi looked at the ring, then at the man who had seen her brilliance in the mud. For the first time, her chilling respect melted into a genuine smile of belonging. "I want to build a legacy," she whispered, leaning into his predatory protection. "And I want the world to remember that the girl they left in the rain was the one who brought the thunder." They stood together, a powerful partnership etched against the rising sun. Yemisi Ademola was no longer a waitress or a bride. She was the queen of the obsidian tower, and she was finally home.